You're not going anywhere unless you hire the right people. Okay, now this is obviously quite a big thing. You've built your happy sandpit. You've created the environment where happiness is possible. You've extended trust. You're asking for people's opinions. You've got the values in place, and you understand what they are, and you're living them. Now what do? Just add random warm bodies? You remember the sand kicker theory? Because we can get seduced by skills, almost our methods of hiring up until now. And I know there are some real HR experts in the room who might profoundly disagree with what I'm saying, but I think that this stuff has gone horribly, horribly wrong. I think what we've done is we have started, or rather we've got ourselves, in fact, I'm kind of angry with the whole lot of us for getting ourselves into this position in the first place, where we've got random collections of bodies all gathered together and we're hoping they'll all push forward. We're hoping they'll all deliver on a strategy, when the reality is we've got so little control over who they actually are and what they actually care about, because we never tried to hire that way in the first place. So when I said that Investec was a university for me, pardon me if I use another example that they do. They're not alone in doing this, but it is a very big thing that they do in South Africa. Very simply, at Investec, people hire their own colleagues. Were you aware of this? They have these little pods of around 15 people. They think that's a perfect working group, which means if you're number 15 to be added to that pod, you could be interviewed 14 times before you get there. Each one of those colleagues interviews you individually. It takes a long time. And then they all sit around a table and they discuss you. Did you notice that? Did you notice this? What about that? What about this? It has to be unanimous. When they hire you, all 14 of those people must say yes. Obviously, it gets more complicated when there's 14, but in a smaller group of 6 or 7, this is a much more doable thing. Nevertheless, they stick to it. They learned this when Investec was 3 guys sitting around a dining room table in an apartment in Orange Grove in 1980, because they realized none of them were any good at hiring people and they didn't know how to do it. And they realized, well, they may as well all get involved then, and they'll all pick. And it's just something that stuck. But the interesting thing about it is they have banned, literally banned, psychometric testing at Investec and any other kind of personality profiling. Banned, banned, banned. They do vocational testing. If you say you're a computer programmer, they'll give you a test to make sure you actually are. Right, they'll go and do that. But that stuff happens before you even get to the interview stage. If you can't pass that, you can't come in. If you can pass that, okay, then they'll move forward. They reckon the qualitative thing that they do, and by the way, sorry, the reason for banning the tests is very simply this. They reckon it takes out the human radar, which is the most important thing in that equation. That if I'm sitting in front of you and I think you are dynamite, but the psychometric test says, not a good fit, I've got to go with the science. Because that's been designed by a professor somewhere, and frankly, I start to discount my own intuition. Same thing goes if I think you are rubbish, but the test says you're fantastic. The only way in which it works is if the test and my intuition agree, in which case you don't need the test. That's their point of view. And they've been quite successful at this. People say Investec hires clones. It certainly seems to hire ridiculously good-looking people. But whatever it does, it's finding people who, from a values point of view, are very much aligned. It's really interesting to walk around the hallways there and see how they greet each other, see how they speak to each other, see how they know each other. But regardless of what Investec does, the culture interview has become a major, major part of how a lot of companies hire now. It's almost getting to the point, I think, where perhaps we're going to struggle to find a way forward by discarding this. Okay, it's the interview at the end after you've done all of the other stuff where you ask questions about human beings and who you are. What's the best conversation you've had this week? There isn't a right or wrong to that, but it's going to tell me something about whether I'm interested in you. It was about Kim Kardashian. It was about weather patterns. I don't know. Motorcycles, yeah, however it works. Okay, there's no right or wrong, but these are the kinds of things companies are starting to investigate more and more and more, and they are throughout the research. It wasn't one company, it was pretty much everybody. Pretty much. Okay? And lesson 3, when I put this to Bruce Whitfield a few months back, he reckoned that there'd be CEOs in Santon all over the place driving into trees, the very suggestion that all they should be doing is managing culture. But I think if we start to look back at what we've spoken about here, extending trust changes the context of how we feel about work. It's got nothing to do with operations. Choosing adult conversations. listening to opinions. It's got nothing to do with operations. It's purely a contextual thing. It makes us feel differently about work. That if, as leadership, we're making it our major responsibility to manage culture, and that's what our focus is, it is plausible, I believe, that we can find, finally, this thing about self-managing teams. People who perform together without needing a hell of a lot of stick and carrot and motivation and everything else that just confuses us and gets us into this complete mess.